Ahoy there! Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another episode of the Frigate Pilot's Manifesto, the series that aims to teach you everything you'll need to know about becoming a dedicated frigate pilot in EVE Echoes. Today's video is going to be a deep dive on one of the most popular tech level 4 tackle frigates, the Caldari Condor II. Very versatile frigate, very powerful, can do anomalies far beyond what you'd expect from a tier 4 frigate, but that's what we're going to go into later. Now, of course, like the other videos in the Frigate Pilot's Manifesto, this one does assume that you are up to date with all of the lessons in the Catskull Academy playlist. So if you haven't gone through all of those, I have put a link at the top right of the screen now and in the description below. You need to make sure that you are aware and understand terms like propulsion systems, how capacitor works, how turrets work, how missiles work, all that kind of thing there. So do go watch those if you haven't already. Now, if you do enjoy this video or find it useful, let me know by hitting a like on it. Sub to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, ding that notification bell to never miss a video, and let me know in the comment section down below what frigates you want me to do a deep dive on next. Finally, as well, if you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel and the content that I put out, please do come join us on Patreon. Every single dollar, every single pledge really does help. That all said and done then, let's talk about the Caldari Condor II. Found in the Caldari state ship tree, the Condor II is a Tech 4 tackle frigate, and we talked about the tackle frigates briefly in our Introduction to Frigates lesson, but today we're going to do a deep dive here onto the Condor II itself. Very cool looking frigate. I do apologise for the flickering, I'm not entirely sure how to change that. That appears to be a bug with this phone, but there we go, it only seems to happen on the appearance screens there, very unusual. Anyway, looking at the fitting profile here for the Condor II, you've got 2 high slots, 2 mid slots, 2 low slots, and then 2 each of the power grid and mechanical rigs. Now, a quick note about rigs. One of the advantages of something like the Condor II is how ridiculously cheap these are. 1 to 2 million to buy the ship itself. Very cheap on the market. Cheaper if you know someone who builds frigates for you. Now, those rigs can be anything from prototype rigs up to Tech 2, Tech 3, so on. Those obviously get more expensive the higher they get, but the higher they are, they don't actually necessarily increase all that much. Like, the difference between a Tech 1 or a Tech 2 rig might be as little as 2%, but you'll be paying anything from 5 million for a Tech 1 to 50 million for a Tech 2, and you don't necessarily need to do that. The Condor II is one of these ships that actually can benefit from keeping it cheap. You don't necessarily need to go for the very best gear on this one. Anyway, we also have a power grid output here of 31 megawatts. Now, whilst this isn't huge in the grand scheme of things, for a frigate like this, that is more than ample. You should have no trouble whatsoever fitting any module that you want onto here, as long as it is a small module. This is not a frigate designed for oversized modules, but that power grid does give you a lot of options and a lot of choices of how to fit this thing. Looking then at the defense of the Condor II, 1,322. That's not particularly high at all. In fact, most cruisers can probably one-shot this if they get a good, clean shot at you. So the trick here is to not let them do that. You see, you've only got a structure of 326, pitiful armour of 322, but your shields are pretty good for a frigate this size at 476. It's a Caldari ship, what do you expect? It's all about the shield tanking. Try and avoid lasers where you can if you're going using one of these, but in fairness, the aim of a Condor II is not to get hit in the first place, and I'm going to come to that in a moment. Now, the capacitor bank on this thing, 345 gigajoules. That's pretty solid for a frigate. You'll find that going cap stable is very simple to do on one like this. Capacitor recharge time, 185 seconds, and a max recharge rate of 4.66. There's not too much really to say about this. It's a frigate. It maintains capacitor stability surprisingly well, with very little required in the way of frigate engineering. Maximum lock targets of 4, again, not really much to say here. It's a frigate, you don't need to be locking onto 4, 5, 6 targets at once because you're not going to be splitting your weapon systems like that. You can get away with locking onto 1 target at a time, adding on the next target as you move into the next one, and with a scan resolution of 789 meters, well, you can see that you can lock on remarkably quickly, especially against larger targets. Now, the signature radius here, 35.2, that is on the large side compared to the other tackle frigates, but it is still small enough that speed tanking is more than viable. Same here with the flight velocity, 395, is a little bit slower than some of the other tackle frigates available here at Tech Level 4, but it is still a very fast speed. You've got a low mass with a decent inertia modifier here that allows you to maintain quite close sharp orbits and to realign and accelerate and decelerate nice and quickly, and with a warp speed of 5.5 astronomical units per second, you are very quick to get from A to B. Great for doing little encounter runs, that kind of thing, where you might need to be 14 jumps away from somewhere. and so on and so forth. For the delivery ones though, if you're doing delivery encounters, you might be interested that 5.5 AUs means you can get back and forth quite quickly, but you do only have a cargo hold of 260 meters cubed. That's not particularly much, does not make for a good cargo runner. There are better ships for that. But for doing combat anomalies and combat encounters, you can get from A to B fairly quickly, and if someone shows up, you can disengage nice and easily as well. Let's have a look then at the trait description. Now, with the Condor II being one of the Tech 4 tackle frigates, of course it has this roll bonus here of an 80% reduction to the amount of capacitor required to operate a stasis webifier, and an 80% reduction to the amount of capacitor required to operate a warp disruptor. This of course means that a stasis webifier and a warp disruptor are very powerful modules on this frigate. You can get up close, you can hold someone down with a warp disruptor and webify them. Always put the disruptor on first, then the webs. Webs do make it easier to achieve your maximum velocity and warp away, so get the warp disruptor active first, then the webs. But once you've got the warp disruptor and the webs on someone, crikey, that's a difficult thing to say. When you have the warp disruptor and the webs on someone, they are a very immobile ship. You can hold them in place while the rest of your gang arrives and then blows them to pieces, or you yourself can just use that for control as well if you're going solo PvP, which is very viable in this ship. You then have skills here for Afterburner. Afterburner bonus per level gives you a 10% increase to Afterburner velocity bonus. That means, obviously, if you've got an Afterburner giving you, say, 150% velocity bonus, if you've only got one skill level here in Afterburner bonus, that's then going to be 150 plus an additional 15 for that 10% there. And if you've got that at full level 5 Afterburner velocity, that's an extra 50% velocity bonus, meaning that 150% increase suddenly becomes 225% increase, making these incredibly zippy ships. I mean, heck, you've got that 395 to begin with, but with an Afterburner running with those skills, you can just, it's fast. It's fast. Then, of course, Frigate Command bonus, that skill that you should have trained to 5 the moment you decided you wanted to start with frigates. Frigate Command bonus per level, 12% increase to small missile torpedo damage. You'll notice that with the Tech 4 tackle frigates, the Frigate Command bonus is usually the related weapon system. Now, of course, you could put railguns on this, you could put cannons on it, you could put decomposers on it for all it matters. I wouldn't, because you're ignoring the fact that you, at full Frigate Command 5, you're getting a 60% DPS increase thanks to the to that Frigate Command bonus on small missiles and torpedoes. So if you're using this, use small missiles and torpedoes. Or torpedoes, don't put both on. Small missiles or small torpedoes are definitely the weapon system to go for here. I mean, heck, even if you've not trained into small missile torpedo operations or small missile torpedo upgrade, this is still an excellent ship for using them because you're still getting 60% raw damage increase, and that's just huge. If you then decide that actually you do like this ship and you want to train into small missile and torpedo operation and upgrade, then that's just beneficial really, isn't it? You're just getting extra range and extra damage. Speaking of skills, therefore, let's actually have a look at those. So obviously, under cruising technology, getting Frigate Command up to level 5 is, as should be abundantly obvious by now, absolutely vital. When you're using something like the Condor II, not only are you getting those bonuses to your small missile and torpedo damage thanks to having Frigate Command at level 5, you're also getting a reduction of 25% to the inertia modifier and a 25% increase to the frigate's natural velocity. That means that 380 odd meters per second is now already 25% higher thanks to Frigate Command, and then you're putting your Afterburner on top of that. So of course the second skill to look at is under navigation, and that's going to be the Afterburner skill. This reduces the amount of capacitor required for your Afterburner, whilst also increasing the activation time. Now this means that basically you are paying less, and you are paying less frequently, so you have a longer time between having to pay your capacitor, and it requires less capacitor each activation. Massive net reduction to the amount of capacitor required for your Afterburner to be running, and with something like this, you do want your Afterburner to be active at all times. And you'll see there as well, we've got that Afterburner velocity bonus plus 20%. That's before we even get the skills on the ship. Just for this, that's 20% plus the additional 50% for the ship itself. They don't stack at exactly 70%, but it is still a humongous increase. And you can see, obviously, I've got Afterburner up to Advanced 4. Do get Afterburner to 5 as quickly as can if you're using these tackle frigates, because speed tanking, you need to be going as fast as possible. So Frigate Command 5 and Navigation Afterburner 5. Now, of course, things like, if we go into here, Frigate Defense Upgrade, always a useful skill to have, extra shield, extra armor, extra structure, and once you start taking this into advanced, that becomes percentage-based, 25% across the board. Once you hit expert, it is slightly lower, only 12.5% per level, but obviously that's something to look at far down the line anyway. Even just getting Frigate Defense Upgrade to 5, that's an additional 150 HP, just helps you take a little bit of extra hits here and there. Shield Operation, despite the fact that this is a shield tank ship, ultimately, again, it shouldn't overly be important. I've got it here at level 5, giving me the activation time reduction and the capacitor requirement reduction. Just helps me run that shield booster a little bit more effectively, but it's not a vital skill to have. The aim of the Condor II is not to get hit in the first place. This just makes repairing any incidental hits that little bit easier. Frigate Engineering, again, not a humongously important skill, but useful to have. Extra capacitor capacity, so a bigger capacitor. Extra power grid, which again, the Condor II doesn't really need, but yeah, it's always nice to have. And then Frigate Warp capacitor need reduction as well. Makes it just nice and easy that if you are in a bit of a combat situation and you look like you're about to run out of capacitor, you can probably warp away quite comfortably with that active. Other than that, though, of course, under the weapon systems here, Small Missile Torpedo Operation and Small Missile Torpedo Upgrade are going to be the two main ones to look at here. Now, what these do, if we go in and have a full look at these, at level 5 on Small Missile Torpedo Operation, you're getting Small Missile Torpedo damage plus 20%, obviously a nice thing to have, extra damage is always good, along with a reduction to the missile and torpedo explosion radius, which makes them better at hitting smaller targets. Excellent if you're going up against frigates, or if you actually, come across someone who is using drones. Very, very useful for taking drones out nice and quickly. Now, Small Missile Torpedo Upgrade is the other side of that coin. It still increases your damage, not quite as much as Operation did, 20% down to 15%, but it also increases the torpedo flight time, missile and torpedo flight time, and their velocity. That is extra range across the board, and extra range makes for better application. If you're using something like torpedoes, it means you can start opening fire with those torpedoes faster as you're moving between your targets, and if you're using things like standard small launchers, it's extra range, which can theoretically be used for kiting or keeping outside of weather fire range, but we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves there. Now, in regards to how you train these, I would get Operation to 4, then Upgrade to 4, then come back for Advanced Small Missile Torpedo Operation to 4. Same then with Advanced Small Missile Torpedo Upgrade to 4. Basically go Operation Upgrade, 4-4, 4-4. Once you have all those at 4, then go back and start on the 5s. And curiously enough there, I would actually go for the Small Missile Torpedo Upgrade 5 before going for Operation 5. Then go for Advanced Operation 5 and Advanced Small Missile Torpedo Upgrade 5. That's basically just to get that little bit of extra range there, which does really help out. It doesn't necessarily increase your flat paper DPS as much, but it does help you apply it a darn sight better. Well worth doing. Now, the fitting that I'm going to showcase on screen here is viable both for PvP and for PvE. You may want to swap the mid slots around, but we'll come to that in just a moment when we start talking about that. So basically what I've got set up here is more of a PvP build. For the Condor II, because we're fast, because we've got a good inertia modifier, we can maintain those orbits, we can get close, we can get under the opponent's guns, and we can really try and stay up close and personal TM. We have the Heth small torpedo launchers equipped here. Now, it doesn't have to be the Heth, any torpedo launch that you can find will work. Ultimately, I've gone for Heths because I had some lying around, and they are still remarkably cheap on the market, allowing you to keep the costs down despite the fact that they're meta level 8, and being meta level 8, you can equip them no matter what your tech level is, which is frankly ludicrous. Again, 80.24 DPS thanks to my skills and the ship itself getting that 60% bonus thanks to Frigate Command 5. We've got a range here of 5.05 kilometers. Not very far at all, admittedly, but we can maintain that quite comfortably with this ship. Now that means that for PvP, we're going to be close. We can use something like a Warp Scrambler rather than the Warp Disruptors because we're going to be in that shorter range. So here, a Mark 7 Warp Scrambler does the job nicely, optimal range of 11.88 kilometers, we're going to be sitting within 5, and it's a Warp Jammer strength of 3, which allows it to tie most ships down quite comfortably. It'll also switch off the target's micro warp drive, meaning if they try to micro warp drive away from you, they're not going to be able to. If they try to afterburner away from you, you are probably faster because of your afterburner velocity bonus, so this really does help you tie your opponent down quite nicely. Now, a Vrikolakus small energy Nosferatu, again it's a meta level 8, again fairly cheap on the market. This whole ship I think cost me, excluding the Scrambler, I'm not going to talk about the costs of Scramblers right now because they're insane, but excluding the Scrambler, this entire ship probably cost me around the range of 15 to 18 million, and that's including the rigs, which we'll come to in a moment. Now, talking about the small energy Nosferatu here, the main reason I've got this is just to help me maintain capacitor stability. If someone decides that they do actually want to start neutralizing me or using a Nosferatu of their own, I can just use this one to help keep me topped up nicely. And you'll see the optimal range here, 4.4 kilometers. That's thanks to the rework that we've just had to the electronic warfare skill, that it now also increases energy Nosferatu and energy neutralizer optimal range, which I am super happy about. Now, of course, you could put a web in here. I don't think it really needs a web. You are fast enough for the most part, and the torpedoes with that explosion velocity reduction are also pretty good at taking out things like drones, which are probably the only thing that are likely to need webbing. You're going to be able to control range thanks to just your afterburner speed with this ship. Webs aren't overly important, I don't think. For the low slots, we've gone for a Settler small shield booster, meta level 5 this time. Again, nice and cheap on the market. I think these are about 200,000 disc at time of buying. Decent amount of shield boost there per activation. We're not going to have this active all the time, we just activate it when we need to top up any damage that we've taken. And of course, the all-important afterburner. Again, the exact level of afterburner you choose doesn't overly matter. It's, you know, you can go for a meta level 5, you can go for a meta level 8, the difference isn't astronomical. It helps to have the high level ones, but if you find that it's ridiculously expensive to go up a small amount, don't bother, keep it cheap. Smuggler small afterburner, these again were going for about I think 500,000 at Jita at the time that I bought them. 243% flight velocity adjustment makes for some insane speeds. I mean, heck, the ship itself is 600.4 meters per second basic. That's before we activate the afterburner. That's going to take that up to about 2,000 quite comfortably. Now, I mentioned for the rigs here, you can see I've just gone for tech level 1 rigs, not too expensive. These are anywhere between 2 and 8 million on the market each. The prototype rigs that you get from the daily login reward chests, those are more than enough for a ship like this. I just didn't have any of those around at time of doing this. Now, for the low slot ones here, the mechanical rigs, sorry, I've gone for a polycarbon engine housing for a 10% reduction to the inertia modifier. Just helps us maintain those sharper orbits a little bit better and change direction a little bit faster. And of course, auxiliary thrusters for that additional 10% flight velocity. Everything on this ship is all about that speed. We want to be going fast, we never want to be slowing down, basically go full on Sonic the Hedgehog with this thing. Now, for the power grid rigs here, a bay loading accelerator gives us the activation time adjustment of -7.5%, meaning your torpedoes and missiles launch that little bit more frequently. More frequent missiles means higher damage per second, just because you're putting more missiles into space. The second one, of course, then is a warhead calefaction catalyst, damage bonus 12.5%. Now, the reason we don't use 2 of either of these is because of that penalty. Using more than one of this type of module or rig on a single ship will result in a penalty to the final effect. That does stack in the case of if you had, for example, a warhead calefaction catalyst 1 and a calefaction catalyst 2. That penalty still applies. Whichever one is the lower doesn't apply its full amount. So if I had 2 of these, I would not be getting 12.5 plus 12.5. You'd actually be getting close to about 12.5 plus 9. Worth noting, so we avoid the penalty by adding the other side of the DPS calculation, damage per second. You can either decrease the seconds or increase the damage. Either way works for increasing your damage, and that gives us a whopping 160.47. And you can see that I only had missile skills at basic 4 and advanced 4 for each of them. In fact, I think I'm only at advanced 3 for the upgrade, so my damage isn't overly high there, but you are able to apply this 5-kilometer range. You can quite comfortably apply this, keep that orbit going. 160.47 DPS, that's a lot for a Tech 4 frigate, and you can comfortably clear PvE and PvP with this. Now, if you are going dedicated into PvE rather than PvP, yeah, you could swap the Warp Scrambler out for something like another Nosferatu, Heck, if you're finding that actually you just want a quick engagement, you could even lean heavier for PvP, into the speed tanking, get rid of the Nosferatu here, and equip something like a tracking disruptor or a guidance disruptor. You'll see that yes, you do go down to 1 minute 34, but that's only with everything running, and you shouldn't have the shield booster active for the most part. Works out longer than that for the most part. Means that you can get up there, start hitting them with a tracking disruptor or a guidance disruptor, so you take less damage from their missiles or their turrets, depending on which one you go for. But I like to go for this fit. It's good for PvE, it's good for PvP. You can kind of get away with doing either, and it means that I can sit there and I can do anomalies, and then if I find an anomaly that's got someone in it, I can take them out and then clear the anomaly when I'm done. Great fun. Anyway, so with that all said and done, let's actually showcase this in action. So in order to showcase this in PvE, we're going to jump into a tier 7 Angel small anomaly, give it a go, and see how we do. Obviously, same setup that you saw before. Warp Scrambler is going to be utterly useless in this scenario, but there we are. Anyway, so we're going to set the orbit on this Condor to about 4 kilometers, good enough that we're going to be in the torpedo range, lock onto everything, and we're going to approach that bellicose. Set an orbit on the bellicose covert ops there in the distance, and go in. And of course, we're looking at the Gistum Cyclone. So anyway, let's bring in a bit more of an angular velocity, because otherwise I'm going to take some damage from those turrets. So I'm setting sort of a manual course at approximately a 45-degree angle. Once I start getting closer, then I can hit the orbit and come in. Yes, I'm still taking damage, but it's a lot less than it would be going in a direct line straight through, and it's nothing that the shield booster here cannot repair through. So now that we're in combat, I'm going to activate the Nosferatu as well, so that we can make sure the capacitor is well fed for that shield booster. So we've got the afterburner going. We're sitting at about 4 to 5 kilometers in an orbit around this bellicose covert ops, and it is worth just pointing out that the Gistum bellicose covert ops is of course a Tech 7 covert ops cruiser. I've covered the covert ops cruisers on this channel with things like the Arbitrator covert ops, so you know how powerful these can be. And I'm here in a Tech 4 frigate, comfortably taking very little damage from speed tanking here. You can see taking a small amount every now and then, just a tiny bit of damage to the shields, the quick rep of the shield booster, like that. When that activates, we'll just quickly top up, so we turn it off because we only need that one cycle. We're back at 100%. You see the damage isn't too bad either, considering this chip costs, what, anywhere between 5 and 8 million to fit, depending on where you're getting your stuff. If you're a G-tier, obviously it might be a bit more, but if you've got friends who are able to build stuff for you, this is a very cheap frigate indeed. And you can see we're just ripping that bellicose down piece by piece by piece. Taking out the shield was fairly quickly, the armor went down nicely too, and now we're currently taking it through hull. After this, we will move on to the Rupture. Rupture, of course, is the next one up in size. That is likely to be our next target. So let's set the orbit to the Rupture. There we go. Actually, we're going to try and set a 0 kilometer orbit just to see how tight this can actually maintain one and what speeds it goes to. So there we are, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer. Okay, we've gone slightly elliptical. That's kind of to be expected. 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers. So we're kind of, yeah, it's definitely an elliptical orbit that we're looking at here. But it does appear to be stabilizing close to the 1 kilometer mark, so we can actually maintain a 1 kilometer orbit around this with a speed of around 1,300 meters per second. That's not bad. If you're up against a cruiser that's using turrets and thus has, like tracking speed taken into effect, that's a pretty way to get a very fast angular velocity. I mean, you can see that if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's about a 7-second orbit. That is not long at all. Take 360 divided by 7, and that's how many degrees per second your angular velocity is. I'm not going to try and do that kind of maths live here, because that's just going to end up embarrassing for everyone involved. But you see, it is a very high angular velocity, excellent for going up against turrets. If I need to pull back if I pull back a little bit further and I'm back up to that 1700, that helps if we're going up against missiles, because missiles use your absolute velocity, not your relative angular velocity. So obviously you want to be going at a full faster speed if you're up against missiles, whereas you want to be going at a higher angular velocity if you're going up against turrets. And that's kind of the basics of speed tanking, something that I will actually do a video on soon, like I did how turrets work and how missiles work. I just need to ask my wife very politely if she'll be willing to do some more graphics for me to get that video going. Anyway, let's move on to the Hurricane now. These are traditionally turret ships, but for some reason they always seem to be missile ships here in the Anomalies. So I'd like to take that, yeah, this one is as well, typically. I'd like to be hitting this one to take it out as quickly as I can, because missiles are going to be a problem for speed tanking. They're more of a problem now than they will be in future. Obviously, once we get that nerf to how rapid missiles work and small missiles, fingers crossed the mediums and the torpedoes become that little bit more manageable, especially in PvP. But anyway, for now, that's taking down that Gistum Hurricane prototype quite comfortably. Tech 7 battlecruiser, it can't hit me, or at least it can't hit me for solid damage, and I can just whittle it down piece by piece. I am occasionally getting hit. I think that's the Cyclone is hitting me occasionally off angle. Is the Cyclone actually using some kind of turret system, I wonder? That's gonna be ridiculous if it is, but it wouldn't at all surprise me with how the NPC rats work. That would also explain why I'm just taking random spikes in damage. It's the turrets launching at the exact moment that I'm either approaching or moving directly away, and thus have very low angular velocity and can take the high damage. Didn't see then. I'm not entirely sure. That must be a turret Cyclone of all things. But there we are. This is ultimately how to speed tank in a Tech 4 frigate. Very cheap ship, as long as you've got people helping you to fit it and, you know, like make the rigs, etc. for you, rather than buying them off Jita. You can get this extraordinarily cheaply, makes it very disposable, and as you can see, tier 7 anomalies, no real difficulty. The storyline ones are a bit trickier due to the elites in the waves, but they are still manageable. Maybe I'll do a video one day of me soloing one of those storyline missions with the elites in there as well. But for now, let's move on and showcase some PvP. Let's have a look in this large Anomaly 5 then. Tama's normally pretty good for this. I'm surprised we haven't found anyone yet. But oh, I see white. What do we have? A Vexor Trainer. Okay, this could be interesting because Vexors obviously are drone ships, and drone ships are still pretty good at dealing with frigates, especially things here like the Condor with speed tanking, because those drones are still pretty solid. So I'm going to use the Sensor Dampener. Now, yes, you see that right. I've swapped the Nosferatu out for a Sensor Dampener because this means it's going to take him absolutely forever to lock onto me once he sees me. I've got that warp scram on. We're in nice and quickly, afterburner straight into an orbit, get that scrambler on, get the sensor dampener on. I don't think he's even spotted me yet that he's taking extra damage. I'm not seeing any yellow boxing at all coming through that this guy has even started to lock on yet. He's taking quite a lot of damage from those torpedoes. No, it looks like the enemies are locking on, the rats are locking onto me, but not our Vexor Trainer friend. So Baldwin11 Kelson, if you're watching this, yeah, I would apologise for blowing you up, but you really need to watch your overview better. When you're doing PvP, or when you're PvEing in a PvP environment, zoom your camera right out so that you can see anyone else coming in, and understand that obviously red modules here, red markings, mean it's the NPCs, whereas he's locking on at last. Whereas white targets mean another player like me. Unfortunately, too little too late there, down goes that Vexor. Nice and easily. Can we get the capsule as well, or is he going to run with that? I think he's run. Yep. There we are. Okay, let's loot him in the meantime while orbiting. Not terrible loot. Some nice Mark V stuff that has some use. Our fleet will be happy with that. Oh, someone else has jumped in. Okay, what do we have here? It is a destroyer, triangle and line destroyer, Dragoon Trainer. Let's lock on. I don't care that I'm being webbed by something, and I've got two Nosferatus on me. Let's get close. Activate that sensor dampener and the warp scrambler. So again, the warp scrambler means that John Marr here is not going to be running away, but also that sensor dampener means he's going to take longer to lock on. How's that going there? See how long that's taking to lock on. This is up against a frigate. Obviously, a destroyer against a frigate isn't normally too bad, but here he's taking his time. That sensor dampener really does the damage here. 43% reduction to its time. He doesn't finish locking on. He's blown up long before anything else happens. Let's loot him, and then we can move on. Yeah, off goes his capsule nice and quickly there. Not hanging around to see what happens. Let's loot that destroyer wreck, see what we have, see if anyone else turns up, and maybe go hunting a bit more. What do we have? Approaching. Anything nice on his destroyer wreck? Oh, Mark III equipment. I almost feel bad. That's clubbing baby seals right there. Anyway, let's move on to the next anomaly and see what we can find. Okay, I've just jumped into one of the Halloween event anomalies because I thought, you know what, if anywhere's going to have players in it, it's going to be one of these. No one's in here yet, so let's try clearing this a little bit, see if I can take out either of these feroxes, and I'm certain someone will turn up. We can see what we get. Maybe we can take him out. Maybe I'm going to get utterly ganked myself, but hey, I'm in a Condor II. Who cares? Nice to see the sensor dampeners there seem to work as well on PvE targets. Certainly, there's no error alert or anything, and that did take him a while to lock onto me. Not taking much damage though. It's a Ferox battlecruiser, of course, very slow tracking on those turrets. For a speedy little machine like me, that's not too much of a threat. I can kind of duck under that, do my thing, and slowly orbit and take this guy down piece by piece. There are two of them. I wonder if I'll get either of these down before anyone arrives. Obviously, Feroxes are notoriously tanky. It's taking me... Oh, we've got a Bellicose Covert Ops. Okay, let's swap to this, see how we do against this one. That's an interesting target. I'll be surprised. He's going to have... I wonder if he'll have target painters. That could be interesting if he does, because obviously that makes a small ship like me a considerably bigger target. But okay, we've engaged, we've got the sensor dampeners on. It's taking him a long time there to lock on. How much damage can I do before he locks? Not much, and yes, he's got target painters. Two of them. That's going to make me like a cruiser as far as he's concerned. So those missiles are going to do some damage, but okay, I've got a shield booster, that's doing its job. Maybe the Feroxes might target onto him as a bigger threat, who knows? Maybe they'll help me out here. I'm happy to sit here for the time being, engage, and see how things go. We'll just see how things go, and if needs be, I can always disengage. I've only got target painters on me at the moment. Of the mid-slots, there we are, 3 mid-slots. 3 mid-slots on a Bellicose Covert Ops, I think. 2 of them are target painters. The third one appears to be a web. So if I need to run, I've got no problems with that at all. He's not going to disrupt me at all. In fact, I'm disrupting him. Could probably turn that off to help my capacitor, but you know what? Once I get him through shield, I think I can kind of, like, I'll be racing him down at that point. The Bellicose, I think, oh, that's a worry. That's a Cyclone. That's a Cyclone as well. And if the Cyclone decides to shoot me first, well, a Bellicose Covert Ops and a Cyclone up against a Condor II. I don't fancy my chances. Can we please disengage? Should I? Yes, I should probably disengage. Right, yeah. Let's get out of this one, I think. Oh, the lag's gonna kill me, isn't it? Let's go again. Let's go again. Warp out. Yeah, the Cyclone is attacking me as well, or at least trying to lock onto me. And I'm out. I'm out. Phew. Oh, that really hurt. That really hurt the armor. Oh, 2% capacitor as well. Okay, so I might have been able to take out that that Bellicose Covert Ops. What are the chances of me being able to take that and a Cyclone out at the same time? Not particularly high. Not particularly high. Right, let's warp back to that gate and let's lick our wounds for a bit, I think. Okay, we've recharged a bit, and I can't help but wonder, that Bellicose Covert Ops and that Cyclone, perhaps they've attacked each other and weakened each other right down to the point that I could get an easy kill here? Let's find out. Take the warp gate back in. Death or glory, you know what? Who wants to live forever? Oh, looks like the Cyclone remains, and he's not taken much damage at all. Can I get under his guns? Will the sensor dampener do enough to stop him looking on? This is a tanky thing. This is suicide. This is absolute suicide, but let's give it a go. Let's give it a go. He's locking on. Slow, gradual lock on there. Let's try and take that drone out, or at least keep an eye on that drone as to what's happening there. Obviously, I would have loved to have docked up and healed. It's the warp disruptor, and ow, there go my shields. Okay, yeah, I'm dead. I'm dead. There is nothing here I can do. That is one destroyed Condor II. Oh well, that's kind of the point. It's a Condor II. It's disposable. I now know that a Cyclone like that just hurts like hell. And there we have it. Everything that you need to know about flying a Condor II tackle frigate. Tech 4 Caldari, great fun ship, nice and cheap. In fact, let's actually have a look at that kill mail and see exactly what the cost there comes out to according to the game losses. Condor II, Here we are, let's load in and have a look. According to this, 38 million. Oh, I think that's because of the warp scrambler, and the stuff that I had in the cargo hold wasn't overly cheap either, but those rigs too, ultimately because they're the tech level 1 rigs rather than just the prototype rigs. Still 38 million, and that's just estimated. That's also with the warp scrambler on there being very expensive. Let's have a very quick look on the market just to see what Jita suggests the cost of this might be. So let's scroll through all of these. Oh, wrong one. There we are, Condor II. So the Condor II ship itself, yeah, 1.2 million, not much at all. The weapon systems, we're looking at missile launchers, Heth torpedoes, currently selling for nothing at all, 330,000 each. Going down to the low slots, we had a shield booster, which was a veteran, if I recall. Veteran shield booster, 1.6 million, so we're now sitting at just over 3 million, call it 3 million. Afterburner in there. It was a Ranger, 3 million, plus the afterburner there, 4 million. That's one of the most expensive pieces, so you're sitting about 7 to 8 million before you include those mid slots, which we can't really give an accurate price on at the moment. So theoretically, you're looking about 8 million's worth of ship that I just got blown up by me, as usual, being greedy in PvP. I swear, that's how I die 90% of the time, just by going, you know what, screw it, let's have a go and see if I can't take it down. Very rarely works out. I should probably try to play a little bit smarter and I wouldn't be so broke all the time. Anyway, hopefully that's given you some inspiration on how to fly this awesome little frigate, and how not to get it blown up. I do think that it's worthwhile to learn from the lessons. You know, they say a smart man learns from his mistakes, a wise man learns from other people's. Be the wise man and learn from my mistakes. Or woman, I'm not judging. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching right the way to the end of this one. Do let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Otherwise, happy sailing and see you in New Eden.